Rated T for teen.
Amazing, sensational, spectacular, superior, ultimate. You've heard these words hundreds of times, and they all encapsulate what many consider to be the most iconic superhero of all time. Spider-Frickin-Man! This dork needs no introduction. The mantle of Spider-Person has been carried by so many different names over the course of this character's 80+ years of existence. And if the response to my last video was any indication, I think the people really like Spider-Man. As a quick aside, I have to say, thank you guys for all the love and support. Last time, I only asked to get to 500, and we skyrocketed the channel to 3,000. Thank you. Your love and support of that last video has humbled me in ways that I could only ever hope to imagine. But we did it together, and with all of the love and support you've shown, it has driven me to want to give you guys more content that you want and more. So today we're talking Spider-Man because... But stay tuned to the end of the video to find out just what's in store for this channel next. But hey, let's set another goal, why not? Can we get this channel to 5,000 subscribers before 2024? I like even numbers when I am changing the volume on my TV, so 5, it makes sense. With the holiday season well underway, it's very easy for me to think of Spider-Man during the Christmas season. I think I have No Way Home to blame for that, since the holiday vibes in that movie were immaculate. That, and with all the hype that generates around this character during the holiday season, they almost go hand in hand at this point. And the latest perpetrator of the Spider hype train is none other than Marvel's Spider-Man 2. In my last video, I predicted that Spider-Man 2 would be the greatest superhero game ever made, having learned from all of the other open-world superhero games that came before it. I'd actually recommend watching that video first before you jump into this one if you want my full context and how I think of this game both before and after playing it. With Insomniac being the veteran developers that they are, I had nothing but high hopes and high faith that this product would be something special. But did it deliver? Does this make the prior 2 games obsolete? Or did Spider-Man 2 succumb to the infestation known as crunch and release as an unfinished product? The answer isn't what you're expecting. So join me in finding out why Spider-Man 2 is perfectly balanced.
This whole thing should be.
And yes, the start of the video wasn't really a gag. This video is rated T for teen. Now that I'm a YouTube partner, I want to be mindful of the people that are watching my content, so I think for this video we're just gonna have to hold back on the sailor language just a little bit. So for that, we are turning on the fabled censored mode. Wait a minute. Is that copyrighted? I better call my good friend Some Call Me Johnny to see if I have his permission to use his gimmick. Wait a minute, I don't know Johnny. What the fuck am I doing?
I don't even know who you are.
Alright, let's do this one last time.
Marvel's Spider-Man 2 takes place 10 months after the events of Spider-Man Miles Morales. Miles and Peter are both now full-time Spider-Men in their prime. Peter is continuing his search for a permanent job, and Miles is getting ready to go to college. Mary Jane has a job at the Bugle, and all of our heroes are in the middle of finding their place in the new normal that they have set for themselves. Until BAM! Darude Sandstorm! People have sung the praises of this opening already since the game's first day, and I'm right there with them. It's a fantastic intro, and it sets the tone for the Spider team throughout the main game story. Mary Jane is the gal in the chair, while Miles and Pete are in the field working side by side. Shoutouts to Genki, my man is underrated. The theme of the overall narrative of Spider-Man 2 is balance, and what happens when we weigh too much importance on one side of our lives.
Balance is a process, not a destination.
Even from the grave, Aunt May continues to be what the children say, based.
I didn't realize you were chill like that. Alright, you're good.
With Harry being swiftly reintroduced to the story, Peter and MJ shift their focus to revisiting their friendship with Harry, while Miles struggles on his own with juggling not only his spider identity, but his search for his dad's killer, the newly unincarcerated Martin Lee.
Hello, everybody. My name is Markiplier, and welcome to Five Nights at Freddy's.
Sprinkle in the symbiote suit with a dash of reptilian rampage and Kraven storming the city. The theme of extremes and priorities is something our heroes are constantly juggling in the story. Peter in particular learns this lesson the hardest throughout the main story missions. The game also heavily leans into flashback sequences this time around to make sure that you are fully caught up on just how close Harry and Peter were as friends back in the day. I think these glimpses into Peter's very early days as the spectacular Spider-Man really sets this game apart from other Spider-Man stories, because we get to see both a veteran spider hero and see what it was like for him in his early days. Spider-Man is nothing if not the person under the mask too. So getting to see more of Peter being Peter and Miles being Miles were massive highlights to the story for me. That and, well...
I just want to tell you how I'm feeling.
Damn it,
Gotta
you're in the
make
office.
you understand. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Okay, gotta go.
Even in death, we'll never escape him.
While we're going to have a spoiler section at the very end of the video, I want to make time to say that the story in Spider-Man 2 was very strong. The first 2 acts were filled with fantastic character moments, and the side missions.
Oh my god, the side missions.
Anyone wanting to fully criticize this game may acknowledge that the main story does have its peaks and its valleys, especially in Act 3.
Soon.
But you cannot deny that the side missions in this game are some of the best Spider-Man storytelling we have had in years. And yes, I'm talking about the Grandpa and Howard missions. I am saying no more. I won't even spoil these for y'all. Experiencing the side stories in Spider-Man 2 is about experiencing the tiny parts of New York and catching glimpses into the greater Insomniac Marvel universe. Everyone knows the giant skyscrapers and the bustling streets, and most reviews will of course gush over the over-the-top, bombastic Hollywood sequences. But it's seeing the little parts of New York through the photo ops and the chats with NPCs that set Spider-Man 2's side content apart from what other superhero action games are doing. Typically with side missions in superhero games, those are reserved for squeezing in lesser-known villains and Easter eggs that help feed the main narrative. And while Spider-Man 2 certainly does follow that same pattern, it's the charm of being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that makes exploring Marvel's New York that much more rewarding this time around. That and holy guacamole, this game is stuffed to the brim with references. I can't really highlight specific ones cause spoilers, duh. But keep your eyes peeled because there are so many good references that both MCU fans and comic fans alike will lose their minds over. I really want to explain my issues with the story, but the only issues I have so far are unfortunately too spoiler worthy, so if you want to hear about that, stick around. Otherwise, just know that the game story is fantastic, but has opportunities for improvement that I hope they address in future games.
Wow. You're amazing. You know that?
I think this goes without saying. It is astonishing how polished this game turned out to be after the initial gameplay reveals and trailers. In such short time, the game went from looking great to phenomenal, especially in 60 FPS. If you're playing on fidelity mode, you're doing yourself a disservice, man. I don't know what else to tell you. The ray tracing, lighting, textures, and speed of this game should only be experienced at that silky smooth 60 FPS this game offers. And that frame rate is consistent, mind you. Very, very few moments where I saw stuttering at all over the course of my playthrough. That and New York just looks insane. Way more densely packed and populated than it has ever been before, with 5 times as many cars and pedestrians roaming the street at any one given time, all the while you're swinging past them at blistering speeds. And not only did they expand the open world to be larger than ever before, but the main island has been given so much polish and touch-ups since the very first game. This effort shines through in the new weather patterns that can be experienced in a couple of story segments. Special shoutouts to the thunderstorm segment shortly after you get the black suit, as well as the 3 different variations of sunrise and sunset you can see throughout the adventure. I can guarantee that Insomniac will seek to add a weather changing feature in the settings for your post-main story adventures in the future, But I wouldn't be surprised if we, for some reason, saw a time of day slider, or at least a couple of options for sunrise and sunset, with varying degrees of lighting for New York. Because I'm not crazy, it genuinely feels like there are more than just 3 times of day in this game. It looks so good. The game is flat out beautiful and amazing to watch in motion. The speed is unmatched, and of course they are abusing the hell out of that SSD to make this magic happen. And it's not just the open world that gets the special treatment here. The graphical fidelity shines through in the story mode as you're taken to unique areas and set pieces that look stunning. Especially in the 3rd act. Soon, you get to see some jaw-dropping visuals and surprises all along the way. And don't forget about the suits, because wow. Just wow! The first 2 games had the right to brag when it came to beautiful looking suits, down to the types of threads on the suit textures that different suits would use. The fidelity on the different suits you can equip in this game is honestly jaw-dropping. Special shout out to those Spider-Verse suits, which look straight ripped from the movies, of course. Even if you have a suit whose design you don't necessarily like or find appealing, you know for damn sure that the detail work on that suit is still out of this world. And lastly, the voice acting. Everyone, of course, does a phenomenal job with all of the same voice actors returning from the prior games, with, of course, the new talent with the new villains and supporting characters. The special shout out goes, of course, to the undisputed champ, Yuri Lowenthal. Yuri has had quite the career behind him, and I feel like this portrayal of Peter with a black suit Peter in the game is a culmination of all of his past roles. He brings out the best of his voice in every shade of Peter's character, from the good all the way to the bully.
Why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel?
Hey,
Really, Yuri? In front of the children?
Father, help!
Don't leave me hanging.
Trying to soak over here.
Not on my watch. Come on. You're too much, man.
This is where I get to let loose and completely gush over this game. I cannot emphasize when I say the gameplay in Marvel Spider-Man 2 makes the prior 2 entries completely obsolete. The only reason I would ever go back to either old game at this point is for the Christmas vibes in Miles Morales, because reasons. But when you boil down the mechanics in all 3 games, Spider-Man 2 trims the fat from every single mechanic in Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales, and more precisely polishes the base mechanics to perfection. PP. Let's talk about combat, since that'll be the easiest to elaborate on. I was slightly mistaken in my prior video where I thought you could map 8 different abilities across both L1 and R1. Technically, you can map 8 abilities to the L1 button only. R1 is reserved for the 4 web gadgets in this game. Heavily decreased, of course, from the prior game's gadget wheel down to just 4 different web gadgets that move enemies honestly in just different directions or inhibits them in some special way. L1 is reserved for the specific spider hero's unique arsenal of abilities, be it Venom or Venom. The gadget wheel is gone, and while there was a lot of fun to be had with that in the first game, with pulling Ratchet and Clank style moves and experimenting with the nonsense you could get into with a web trap, web bomb, or electric web, the combat in Spider-Man 2 is far more focused and thus allows the combat to present far clearer challenges than the first game. Spider-Man 1, I could fly into the conflict and just web my way out of every single fight because of how much the game could let me do. Now in Spider-Man 2, I have to actively consider cooldowns, upgrades that I have that reduce those cooldowns based on specific conditions, alongside each character's unique super move. Peter gets a Rage mode with the symbiote, and Miles gets his Venom Blast. In lieu of the gadget wheel, both Peter and Miles now have independent skill trees and a shared skill tree that grants far more moves during actual combat than in prior entries. Shoutouts to the swing kick follow-up combo, the directional web yank, and the nutcracker sweep. And just as I predicted in my last video, because the combat has greater focus on the actual punches and kicks rather than web gadgets, the enemies are now far more focused on specific tactics required to beat them depending on who you're fighting, therefore making the combat a lot more challenging and engaging. Some Craven drones can disrupt your L1 abilities, and other enemies can disrupt your web gadgets. And you of course get your ranged variants, basic grunts, and brutes. But you get so many different flavors of each type of enemy in the game with slightly different tactics that you never really feel like you are constantly fighting the same enemy over and over again. Case in point, and I don't think this is a spoiler, the Cult of the Flame enemies appear in the game and are another faction that you can see in the open world. And they will regularly use flame-based attacks that apply over a wider area, so instead of just a single point dodge or parry, you have to consider a more widespread danger zone when you're fighting them. The new parry mechanic is a welcome change. While difficult to learn at first, once you get the hang of timing, you will go from the chosen undead to... This keeps combat fresh, fun, and frenetic over the course of the entire adventure. Now, the part you have all been waiting for.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Yeah, all I need are some better days. Cause all I want, and I pray, I believe in the better days.
Remember when I said that the prior 2 games were obsolete now? While something could be said about enjoying the gadget wheel versus the full combo system, there is no denying that the web swinging in Marvel Spider-Man 2 is the most balanced and consistent iteration across this character's entire gaming career. I had an analogy in mind that stuck in my head throughout the course of me playing Spider-Man 2 as I was messing around with the mechanics. Think of web swinging in Spider-Man 1 like a pulse, consistent, with a specific rhythm and speed in mind. Sometimes going slightly above normal and sometimes requiring you to pace yourself depending on circumstances. Web swinging in Miles Morales took that system and allowed you to be faster and more expressive, but there's still a rhythm to it no matter how fast you're going. The expectation of how you interact with the environment boils down to the same handful of answers depending on whether you want to use webs, parkour, or venom jumps. It all is still a consistent rhythm no matter how fast you're going. Web swinging in Spider-Man 2 is like a one-man freeform jazz band with a black belt in improv. The speeds you can reach in this game with the tools you have at your disposal is unprecedented. Dare I say, ludicrous.
Now buckle this! Ludicrous speed! Go!
Corner tethers, web launches, loop-de-loops, dashes, and extra jumps, and of course the goddamn web wings! What was once only a handful of answers during Traversal has evolved into dozens of traversal options at any one specific time. This is easily the most expressive web swinging system we have ever seen in a Spider-Man game to date. The amount of options you have, every single player will find unique little touches and changes that they can make to their web swinging and make their style wholly their own. It's equal parts realistic physics with equal parts heroic fantasy. And you can even adjust your web swinging assistance slider, so that the only thing in control when you hold down R2 is sweet, sweet gravity. I personally experimented with both high and low swing assist settings, but I found a sweet spot at 5 swing assist as the perfect middle ground between me having full control and me having to excessively be mindful of actual physics when swinging through the city. The swing assist does not hinder your ability to go faster, however. It generally only affects turning and how close to the ground you can get when you initiate a swing. The lower the number, the more risks you take while performing an actual swing and can actually end up colliding with the ground when you swing. But anyone, no matter what setting they are at, will still be able to achieve the breakneck speeds that the game encourages you to achieve while swinging around the expanded New York playground. Fast travel? I don't need fast travel! I am the fast travel! My only nitpick with the web swinging is the newly introduced loop-de-loop mechanic. While obviously very fun and a great way to achieve speed or height, I found that it was honestly just too specific on its activation. Not feeling like an expression of physics, but rather a special move in a fighting game like a Hadouken. To activate it, you have to have already clicked in the L3 button to initiate a dive, and you need to have gathered enough speed to begin the loop. And your web line can't be too short or too long. Greatly appreciated though, and I'm sure as I get used to it, it will become yet another fantastic traversal tool. But as of right now, it just feels a little awkward to me to use. Lastly, the final cornerstone of the main gameplay in Spider-Man 2 is stealth, which has received a significant bump since the last few entries. You still have the cloak option as Miles, but now with the newly added web lines, Peter and Miles have complete control over the environment when you're taking part in stealth. The game now encourages strong stealth gameplay in certain sections instead of just running in guns a-blazing with no consequences. Special shout out to the Kraven strongholds throughout the game, as those facilities had a crap ton of goons to fight, and if you take your time, sabotage their resources, and then begin a fight, you'll find yourself dealing with those goons a lot more easily because you chose to go about it stealthily first. It's not a requirement in all missions, but things like the web lines, wall and ceiling takedowns, and the newly added dual takedown, this gives stealth a far better pacing here than in the prior entries. Now, the main story gives you plenty to do that isn't beating up baddies or swinging from rooftops. If you thought the hacking minigames in Spider-Man 1 were obnoxious, I'm so sorry for your loss. The minigames in Spider-Man 2's main story campaign have, honestly, they've been turned up to 11. From shooting drones as a robot bee, yes, I'm not kidding, to piloting spider drones, to like 8 different carnival games. There's no shortage of moments that break up the gameplay with trivial, albeit charming moments. Bear in mind that these sequences serve the story too, as a lot of these sequences come when you're playing as either just Peter or Miles in their civilian clothes, so honestly, these minigames never felt too intrusive to me. However, I don't think everyone will feel the same as me, so just a fair warning. Next up, I want to talk about the character progression just very quick because it actually hasn't seen too many changes since the first 2 games. You level up, you get skill points, and you spend those skill points on the various combat skills in the game and upgrade your gadgets and tools to make them stronger and better. You get 3 different skill trees, one for both Spider-Men and one for Miles and one for Peter. Again, mostly unchanged from the first 2 games. I don't have a lot of complaints here. Kind of a slow burn at start, but you eventually start to get a lot more XP, so you level up very quickly later on. Suits are a separate story, as the game throws a bunch of currency types at you. No battle passes here, but there's quite a bit to unpack. You've got basic tech parts, hero tokens, city tokens, and rare tech parts. You get all the various tokens by exploring the city, finding caches, smacking heads, and moving on. Now, once you get enough currency, you not only get the opportunity to unlock alternate suits, but bam! You get the newly added suit style system. I think the suit style system was a massively appreciated change here, because now Insomniac can add even more suits to the game by simply recoloring existing suits as references to other suits that exist in the greater Marvel universe. Special shout out to the Miles casual style that is ripped straight from Into the Spider-Verse, the simple black suit variants for both Peter and Miles, those look sick as hell, among many other references.
Now let's see if Insomniac got a chance to watch my last video and included any of the suggestions that I made. Let's see here.
I will never recover from this.
Nah, I'm just kidding. Apparently Chasm got an alternate suit style for the Scarlet Spider outfit, so I'm not, like, that mad.
I'm a little mad.
The only unfortunate bit here is actually with the cinematic suits in the game. Any suit that is ripped straight from one of the movies is not granted a suit style. That goes for almost half of Peter's suits, and of course the Spider-Verse suits. It's a shame too, because while there is a healthy amount of suits from the movies in this game, a couple of glaring omissions are Spider-Man 2099 from Across the Spider-Verse and Hobie Brown from the same film. Insomniac are no strangers to free content drops though, so perhaps down the line there is hope for them to be added, but just a nitpick in the meantime.
And those are my thoughts on Marvel's Spider-Man 2, a game that echoes the mindset of games like God of War Ragnarok and Doom Eternal. Don't fix what ain't broke. No need to reinvent the wheel. Just take what worked and make it better. The combat is snappier than ever before. Miles and Peter's new abilities like the symbiote suit and the bioelectric abilities allow for so much skill expression in combat and give you that power fantasy. And yes, it makes you feel like Spider-Man! The game has, hands down, the greatest web swinging we have ever seen in Spider-Man's gaming career. Yes, let go of your nostalgia.
Please don't go this way.
No, you're still holding on! Let go!
I actually had to fight myself and pull myself away from my PlayStation just to start writing this review, because even after pouring over 20 hours into this game, I still find myself just going back in and swinging around the city to my heart's content. It is hypnotic how just swinging in this game can keep me hooked for hours on end, without doing any quests or anything else, just swinging. The game is perfectly paced, with a highly polished and well put together story campaign, with spectacular side stories that are even sometimes more captivating than the main narrative. The only major complaints that I really have are where the story goes in Act 3, the strange omission of a few suits, and the oddly missing New Game Plus mode along with a weather changing feature. All of these are, of course, things that can and will be patched in due time. Insomniac have confirmed New Game Plus is on the way. So all in all, the game is easily what I was looking for and more when it came to the sequel to my favorite superhero game of all time. Spider-Man 2 puts emphasis on the parts that work. There are parts that still don't work, but it maintains balance and consistency throughout the entire adventure. Spider-Man continues the PlayStation and Sony tradition of highly polished and amazing single-player adventures. Believe the hype, as Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is absolutely worth your time.
I give Marvel's Spider-Man 2 a Spider-Man No Way Home out of Spider-Man 2. Try and figure that rating system out, ya schmucks.
So those were my thoughts on the game without jumping into spoiler territory. I mean this when I say you want to know as little as possible about this game before diving in, because the spoilers in this game have implications for the future of superhero games as we know it. Yes, I'm dead serious. If you don't want spoiled, hop off now, and I'll see you once more before 2023 is truly over, cause whoo boy do we have some stuff to talk about. But for the rest of you, buckle up.
MJ.
As is the case with any major symbiote storyline in the Spider-Man universe, Peter finds out that the suit may not be so good for him to keep on, so with the help of some of his friends, they manage to rip it off of him. The ooze finds its way back to Harry, twists his mind into wanting to heal the world, and bam! Web of Shadows 2, baby!
Ha! You thought this was Spider-Man 2? Guess again, nerd!
Yes, I'm not kidding. The third act in this game is, wow. Now, I love this. On paper, I love this. I think that revisiting the concept of a superpowered Venom taking over the world with a symbiote army is amazing. But there is a very, very key element that is missing here. Venom is not a character in this story. He is a means to an end. This is a part of the Venom character that I have had my gripes about in recent years. Venom lately has felt more like the symbiote as the character rather than the collective of symbiote and host. Yes, the symbiote has and always had ulterior motives and corrupts the host's mind and twisting their desire to align with the symbiotes. But in this story, Harry's just a vehicle for Venom to use to achieve his final form and start taking over New York. I think the symbiote-infested New York had key moments for some fantastic visuals. It's wild to me that they spent all this time just completely remodeling the city, only for it to be like that for just a couple of hours at the end of the story. But hey, it's a bunch of dumb Hollywood symbiote fun, and I enjoyed my time with it. I just hope that the Eddie Brock of this universe finds his own symbiote at some point, and we can finally get that Venom spin-off game someday.
And yes, Insomniac, we want it. We are waiting.
Insomniac, I will literally sell my firstborn child. If you could give us a Venom spin-off game, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Now, the absolute banger surprises for me in this story were all, of course, symbiote related. But the triple whammy of surprises came from Agent Venom, of all things, Anti-Venom, and Woody Harrelson.
There's gonna be carnage.
Insomniac were given the reins on a ton of symbiote references, and they really just pulled in everything. The symbol of Null, Venom's wings from King in Black, Scream, the Venom grunts mimicking the colors of the Life Foundation symbiotes. It is insanity how much there is in here. I guess it's no surprise that if you took my advice from the last video and read King in Black, you won't be disappointed here. One major issue that I do have, though, is the glaring omission of Donny Cates' name in the credits. I scanned them, and as far as I can tell, I couldn't find his name anywhere. Insomniac, I get it, he didn't make the game and he didn't make money off of the game, but please, put respect on that man's name. He added so much symbiote lore. If y'all want to use some of that lore, that's great, but you gotta give credit where credit is due. One funny thing I noticed in Act 3 as well is that towards the very end, a lot of the fights started to feel like therapy sessions.
Look, you said you want to help people!
Nobody read it!
I read it! It helped me!
All I do is help you!
MJ!
My life is constantly interrupted by you!
Peter, I respect how you feel, but I can't acknowledge your emotions while tasting the concrete. Please stop!
There are just so many references in this game, it is hard to keep track of where Insomniac will go next. But I think we know of at least 2 key players that will absolutely factor into future stories in this world. And that is Cletus Cassidy and Cindy Moon. Insomniac know the assignment now. They want a female spider hero in this world, and instead of doing the obvious route with Spider-Gwen, we're skipping her entirely and going straight to Silk. That is just insanity to me, and one thing in this story that I never saw coming. Definitely the biggest jaw-dropper moment for me by a long shot. I also think that Miles taking the lead while Peter focuses on being Peter Parker again is a great message for these heroes. Miles was always meant to carry the mantle, and while I don't think we're fully done with Peter in this world just yet, I think he deserves a break for sure.
At this stage, I could go on and on, but I want to quit rambling and just say that the game is easily worth your time and money. I don't care what Twitter says, and no, Elon, I'm not calling it that. So those are my thoughts on Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Please feel free to like the video if you enjoyed what I had to say here today, and leave a comment and let me know what your favorite suit to use is when you're just swinging around in the game. The correct answer is Andrew Garfield. And if you are half as excited as I am to see what the future of superhero media has in store for both games and film, then I would encourage you to consider subscribing to see what I've got cooking up next. But as always, I have been your host, AllKnight, and do not forget to stay loved, keep loving, and have a wonderful night.